Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Jen Sugarmeyer, your host of Mindset in the Morning. But it is not the morning right now as I'm going live on YouTube. It is almost 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on a Sunday. And the reason I decided to go live this evening is because the Taliban actually have taken over Afghanistan. And the reason I'm going live is for a few reasons. This is a mindset show. And so I want to make sure that as an entire globe are going through this, because it does impact there's always a ripple effect. We've got troops from all over the world that have been there. How do I know? Because I spent a year in Afghanistan. So because this is so close to my heart, as is mindset, I wanted to go live and talk about how do we navigate in our mind when something big happens like this, or potentially big happens in the world. How do we stay in a state of peace? So a little about my background. I back in 2010, 2011, I spent a year in Afghanistan. I worked various contracts. My first one I was working at Bagram Air Force Base, and my second contract I was working at the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, both of which have been taken over today, is my understanding from the data that I have found. And today is August 15th, 2021. It looks as though the Taliban have taken over the palace. So the United States entered back in, I think it was 2001 when we officially went over. It may have been 2002, but I believe it was 2001. And that happened after the September 11th event, which shook the entire nation. And the things that we're going to talk about here today and how to handle these big situations absolutely apply to things like 9/11, what's happening today, COVID, really any situation. But as we embrace for next steps, I want us to feel solid up here. So as September 11th happened, it was shortly thereafter that the United States went into Afghanistan. The embassy is in Kabul. I worked there for about 6 months. And so as I'm seeing things unfold and I'm hearing about the 5,000 prisoners that were at Bagram Air Force Base that were let go, I know exactly where that prison is. And I remember when they were setting it up and getting the biometrics, and I worked with the individuals to do the DNA and the fingerprinting. And it was, I watched that grow and build, and it's been 20 years now. Wow. It's been 20 years. And here the Taliban is now taking over again. And this isn't the first time in Afghanistan that this has happened. Before the US went in, it was the Russians. And at some point, the Russians pulled out as well. You can go do your own research on all of that. But it's not just the US that went in, or the Russians. I remember I hung out quite a bit at the United Arab Emirates. They had a base there, or they had a little compound, and I would go there and break bread with them. And I got to know them. And, the French were there and the Italians were there. And I mean, everyone had a presence. Tons of countries did. So when something like this happens, this may have been something that was led by the United States or precipitated by the United States, but in no way does this just impact us. And we have a global economy. I remember I worked in procurement and logistics. And in order for us to purchase anything and get it into the country, I mean, we had to go through Uzbekistan, and you didn't just order things. And some of the things did that they would order directly, but most of the things had to come in. They had to route through a different country. And there were only 4 countries at that time that would fly there. It was Germany, Dubai, or UAE, and 2 other, I can't remember. So my point is, when we're looking at a situation, this is not just, it doesn't just impact the United States. And I don't know what's going to be coming next. And fortunately, from what I've seen today, and I think that we're only a few hours into this takeover, that it appears to be relatively peaceful. And I'll use that term loosely. I have no idea what's going on. I'm not a reporter. I've watched some clips out on social media and things that I've seen. And my hope is that this time, that if the Taliban do take over the country, because I believe that they've only taken over the palace at this point, but if they take over power as well, that they take it over in a different way than in the past. And it's a different regime. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. But the truth is, when we turn on the news and we see things, we start to panic so often. I mean, it's natural. That is such a natural reaction for us because we don't know what's going to happen. And it's hard to think about. I have to be honest. I'm just being really honest here, because we've lost so many lives over there. The United States and everyone else, we've lost so many human lives as a part of this. And I can imagine what those families are going through as well, because it's not just what's going to happen next, but it's thinking about some of the lives that were lost, and whatever thoughts may come to mind along those lines. So there's a lot of pain, there's fear, maybe there's anger. But my point is, there is some negative reaction that many of us can fall into when we see something large on the news. And we know, if you've been watching the show, if you follow me at all, Jen Sugarmeyer, you can go out to jensugarmeyer.com, start following me. I'm the one and only Jen Sugarmeyer. So whether or not you follow me here or on other platforms, I talk about these two states of being, and you can be in either one or the other. And one state is a state of suffering, and that is where you don't feel good. And that's that fear, frustration, anger, resentment, anxiety, embarrassment, boredom. None of us want to be in this state. And not only do we not want to be in that state, but it's not where we're in our most powerful state. That's not where we have clarity and make the best decisions. So we have to have a way, as we're going through life, and all of these things are testing our patience and testing our anger and testing our, are we getting mad and angry and fearful and all? We're constantly being tested. That's like the devil just poking at you all the time. And how do you navigate that? You have to have tools in place, which is what we're talking about, because we don't want to be in a state of suffering. We want to be in the beautiful state of mind, which is where we have peace and clarity and joy and happiness. But we will always have things that are poking at us, whether that's September 11th, whether it's the Taliban taking over in Afghanistan, whether that's somebody passing away, whether that's whatever may happen, there is always going to be something that happens. Maybe your friend says something about you. So, and that really gets you upset. I had a business partner for like a minute, and that was a disaster. And you know what? I went into a state of suffering because it wasn't a great situation. And she continues to go out and dislike all my posts. It's just frustrating. So I've had to learn to detach myself from that. So whether it's big or whether it's small, we don't want to be in suffering. And that's exactly why they say, don't make any big decisions, financially, if you see the stock market move, because it could come back up. Now, I'm not a financial analyst, so go talk to your people. But when COVID happened, how many people went and pulled their money out because they were so afraid? And then what has happened is come back up. So we know from looking at history that the market is volatile. We know if it goes down, it's going to come up, and it's going to go down, it's going to come up. And this is just in general. I'm not talking about the stock from that company that's tanking. Go talk to your financial advisor. But my point is, when you are in fear, when you are angry, when you are mad and you make a decision, you do not have the clarity. So go talk to your financial advisor, go take a breath, think through it before you act. Don't just punch a wall, break your hand and say, you know what? I shouldn't have done that, because you know what? I've done it too. And I've had a broken toe because of it. So I don't want you to break your toe. So what can we do? What can we do? We turn on the news, or you pick a terrible business partner, or whatever, something, your friend's doing something and it's really irritating you. You're constantly getting these pokes. What do you do? First, and the thing I always talk about first is choice. You have to remember that you have a choice in how you're showing up. You don't have to be in a state of frustration or fear or any of those. You don't have to be there. But if we're not aware of our thoughts, then they pick whatever they want. And when we see things and like we don't know what's going to happen out of this event. When we watched, I remember where I was. I'm sure most of us that were alive and old enough to remember when September 11th happened and where we were at. And we looked and we said, what does all this mean? And we saw the loss of lives and it felt, and we were attacked. Somebody took over. Somebody had that much hatred and it hurt and there was pain. And yeah, I mean, there is sadness. There is a thing called grief and we have to go through those phases of grief. And so that's why I kind of keep that one out. I don't talk about that one so much because that's something, there are stages of grief that you need to go through. But anger, you don't have to be there. Being in fear, you don't have to be there. But you have to remember that you have a choice. You can have a choice mindset. That means everything you pick is the glass half full or is the glass half empty. And I cannot make that call for you. Only you can make that call for you. But if you just look at the glass and you say, well, it's half empty, but it doesn't make you feel good, then did you truly ask yourself, is that the choice that you would have picked? Or was it just picked for you? The most powerful question that you can ask yourself is, does this serve me? So if you find that you aren't where you want to be, say, does this serve me? Is the way that I'm thinking about a situation, is it helping me out in the long run? Is it working for me? Or is it making me mad? And yeah, like this business partner, I'm like, you know what? Me putting all this energy into her is only making me mad. And I wish she would leave me alone. I wish she would stop harassing me. I wish she would. And yes, I have talked to lawyers and all this, but I'm like, I'm just wasting time. Is it serving me? Karma will take care of her. It's fine. Is it serving you to be in that state? So that's the first. You have to remember choice. You have to. If you don't acknowledge that you have a choice, then you're probably going to find, not always, but you're probably going to find yourself someplace that you don't want to be. You're going to be like, how did I end up here? I don't even feel good. Well, because you didn't ask yourself, does this serve me? And if the answer is no, I mean, maybe you really want to be angry, but like, does it make you feel good to be angry? Yes. Okay. Does it make your blood pressure rise? Is that where you want to be? Yes. I mean, I don't know. I can't answer those questions for you. But if you say, I don't want my blood pressure to rise, it doesn't make me feel good, then guess what? You need to pick a different path. So that's one. Secondly, we need to understand this idea of control. There are things we control in this world, and there are things that we absolutely do not control. And what has happened today in Afghanistan, none of us control. We can control our mind. We can control our emotions. We can control our actions. We can control our attitude, but you can't control other people. You can't control the world. It doesn't work that way. And when we try to control things that are outside of our control, one of two things happen. A, it is completely wasted time. Completely wasted. There is nothing I can do about who's president. There is nothing I can do about what happened today. There is nothing I could do about the COVID outbreak. There is nothing I can do about fill in the blank. So what can I control? I can control if I vote. I can control if I get vaccinated and wear a mask. I can control if I want to look and binge watch on all of the media that's happening, the updates in Afghanistan, and allow that to get into my head and see all those things. I remember, I don't know, it was a few months ago, and I was watching Netflix, and I watched like one of these murder mystery shows or something. And then all of a sudden, the algorithm on Netflix kept showing me these murder shows or prison shows or whatever they were. It was a prison show. I don't know, whatever it was. Anyway, and so I started like binge watching these, and I was having nightmares. I was I was scared. I watch comedy and I watch cartoons. I don't watch action movies. I don't watch scary movies. I don't watch horror movies. I don't like watching anything that doesn't put me in a good state of mind. That doesn't make me laugh. That's how I want to be when I watch something. So it's very rare that you'll find me, like even like an Ocean's 11 or, an action drama kind of movie. Like I'm not that type of person. I want to watch Shrek. I want to watch The Lion King. I want to watch Cinderella, something that's lighthearted. But I control that. So I can't control what is happening, but I control if I'm pumping all of this into my mind. If I'm allowing myself to be consumed by all of it. Because like you are what you eat, you are what you listen to. You are what you feed your mind. Your energy goes where your thoughts go. So if your thoughts are all around us, watching these murder shows, that's where your energy is. Is that where you want to put it? So you have a choice. You have a choice in how you want to show up. And you need to be asking yourself, does this serve me? That's where you're going to find your answers. Is the way that I'm thinking serve me? Is the way that I'm feeling, does it serve me? Is the way that I'm acting? You ever been around someone and you're like, screw her, I'm just not going to call her. And you're like, are you playing games? Like, does that serve you to play games? I don't know. But ask yourself that question and get real with yourself. If you're like, yeah, I feel good about playing games. You know what I'm talking about. All of us have played games at some point. You're like, I'm not going to call her. She can call me. Let's see how long it takes, So reach out to that person. Or maybe you decide, you know what? That isn't even the person that I need in my life anyways, because they're just not there for me. So I'm going to change you in my mind from a friend to an acquaintance and be done with that. I did that before. And that was massive. I was like, you know what? You actually don't care about me as much as I care about you. So we could still be friends. You're just going to be an acquaintance. But me playing games, let's see who can contact the other person first, isn't going to serve me. So ask yourself that. You have a choice. Secondly, you have to understand what you control and what you don't control. You control your attitude. You control your thoughts. You control your actions. But you don't control what's happening on the news. You don't control these big things that are going on around the world. In fact, you don't even control the person sitting next to you. My cat is over here. I can't control her. If I could, she'd be a lap cat. She'd come and sit on my lap. But I pick her up and I get 15 seconds and she bounces. I can't control my cat. Doesn't mean that I don't have any level of control and my house is out of control, but I don't control her. She controls her. So know what you control and what you don't control. And lastly, put the right boundaries in place in your life between you and whatever it is that's going on. Emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, spiritual boundaries. If you are not familiar with boundaries, boundaries are everything. This wasn't meant to be a self-promotion, but I did write a book. It's called Defining Your Boundaries. It's out on Audible. And I talk about the different types of boundaries. And I wrote this when COVID started. I actually didn't anticipate talking about this, but since we're here, I started writing this April 1st, 2020. And the reason I did it is because the world was falling apart and there was a better way. There was a better way. We didn't have to go into these states of suffering. Look, Anne Frank, yeah, she was 12 years old and she was hiding in her attic with her family, hiding from the Nazis. And, you know, I can only imagine how scary that is. You know, them coming around and you can't even make any noise. You can't breathe where they can hear you. Can you imagine? Like you probably need to pee when they're around. You can't pee. You can't make any noise. She's 12 years old. How many 12-year-olds want to be hanging out with their parents in an attic, hiding in fear or hiding? Let's say that. So what'd she do? She ended up getting a journal. And that was her place of peace. And she said, you know what? There's nothing I can do about the situation. And I want to choose happiness. So I'm going to have a happy space. I'm going to go to this happy place. And that's going to be in my journal. And that's what she would do. She would write in her little journal. She had boundaries around what she was going to allow impact her. That was the choice that she made. She had mental boundaries. She had spiritual boundaries. She had emotional boundaries. She had physical boundaries, intellectual boundaries, material, time. Boundaries are everything. Think about how much time boundaries, for example. Think about how much time you're spending watching the news. Why not spend 5 minutes instead of 5 hours? Because just like when I watched those murder shows, they didn't do anything for me. They just put me in a state of fear. So time box your life. Put some boundaries around the time that you're spending, putting your energy and your thoughts into whatever it is. Don't ignore it, but don't spend all of your time there. Find your happy place and go there. Have emotional boundaries. Say, you know what? This is exactly what I said. When I got laid off, I said, you will not steal my joy. It was literally the first thing I had said. You will not steal my joy. And I think I've written about it in this book. I'd have to go back and look at it. I'm like, okay, this happened. It's data. I'm not going to let you take what I own. And I own my happiness. I own my joy. So I put a boundary up between me and the situation. And I said, you don't cross this. You stay on the other side. That's my boundary, my choice. See? Everything in our life, we can tie back to boundaries and confidence. So you may want to pick this up. Finding your boundaries, you can find it in different outlets, but it's so important for you to stay on top of your mind and how you're feeling and being real with yourself. These big situations are going to continue to come up in your life. They are. And it's the stock market, it's in Afghanistan, it's in Rwanda, it's in South America. I don't know why I just went from country to continent. I think I was thinking South Africa, but wherever it is, these things are going to happen. Choice, control, boundaries. Use what you have up here. You can stay in a beautiful state of being. Absolutely. So I'm just going to leave it at that because, and these are all principles as part of, we can be confident about who we are and where we are in our lives. And these things don't have to get to us. We can still have trust and faith and belief in ourselves and security in ourselves and just confidence in what we do if we engage up here. So because I've been in Afghanistan and I saw that on the news. I just thought that I would pass that along. If you have found this to be helpful, I would love if you would subscribe. This is me just going rogue and talking off, just talking. And I hope you found this helpful. I'd love if you drop in the comments just some thoughts that you had. If you think that it'll help somebody else, please share. But I would love if you would subscribe to the channel. We are live 5 days a week at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. But because it's YouTube, you can watch it whenever you would like. I am Jen Sugarmeyer, your host of Mindset in the Morning. And this was us talking about how to stay in a beautiful state of mind, even when there's chaos happening. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a good night. Cheers.